Your Excellency, Anthony Carmona, President of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, Honorable Anthony Garcia, Minister of Education, and our gracious host for this evening, Sir George Allain, Chancellor of the University of the West Indies, Professor Sir Hilary Beckles, Vice Chancellor of the University of the West Indies, Dr. the Honorable Lovell Francis, Minister of State in the Ministry of Education, Permanent Secretaries in the Ministries of Education, Council members of the University of the West Indies, Mr. Derwin Howell, representing Republic Bank as its Executive Director, leaders of the Ministry of Education and the University of the West Indies, distinguished guests, members of the media, good evening and welcome. We are a family of higher education, family and friends together, and I think we need to make this a little more warm. You're all very far from me, so I ask you to please come up more to the front. We have a very short program, but I think it's something that you'll all be very interested in hearing about, so do join us closer to the front of the room. The Honorable Minister has very graciously afforded us some time during his celebratory event this evening to launch the UWI's annual Global Giving Week. This is a marquee and groundbreaking initiative of the UWI aimed at strengthening, deepening, and making more prolific our impact within the Caribbean. As we do not want to keep you for too long from your conversations and libations, I would like to begin the formal program by inviting the Honorable Minister to bring some welcome remarks.
Your Excellency, President of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, Anthony Thomas Aquinas Carmona, Chancellor of the University of the West Indies, Sir George Allain, Vice Chancellor, Professor Sir Hilary Beckles, Principals of UWI campuses, Mona, Cave Hill, and St. Augustine, outgoing Principal of St. Augustine campus, Professor Clement Sankat, and as you know, today a new principal was announced. I wish at this point to thank Professor Sankat on behalf of the government of Trinidad and Tobago for the sterling contribution you have made to education, and in particular to tertiary education in our country. We should thank you very much. I recognize in the audience two permanent secretaries from the Ministry of Education, Permanent Secretary Gillian McIntyre and the Permanent Secretary Natasha Barrow. Also in the audience is my very lovely wife, Beulah. Other distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. If there's one thing that His Excellency and I agreed upon, is that the national anthem of Trinidad and Tobago is one of the best national anthems that we have. I don't think I need to say any more, Your Excellency. I don't want to disclose that little secret chat we had. It is indeed a pleasure of mine to welcome all of you here today on this occasion. You know, we just concluded a very important meeting of the University of the West Indies. And while we had envisaged that this function would have started at 6 o'clock, because of the intense discussion and debate that we had this morning and today, we ran a little late. And of course, you know, Friday afternoon, the traffic, how it is. And as a result, we are a little late, but I'm sure you will forgive us for that. I've been asked to say a few words, even as I welcome you here today. And I've been asked to share some views on nation building. But whenever one talks about nation building, the thought immediately comes forward, what type of nation do we wish to build? In Trinidad and Tobago, and indeed throughout the West Indies, throughout the Caribbean, it is our hope and intention that whatever nation we build will be a nation of which we all can be proud. The University of the West Indies has, over the past 68 years, has been doing a tremendous job in nation building. And for this, I want to congratulate you and I want to thank you. Today, Sir George seemed to be a bit surprised when at lunch I told him that I was a graduate of the University of the West Indies. I don't know why. Perhaps he thought that I was a graduate of Oxford. But no, UWI is my alma mater. And so far, we have been doing well, but we need to continue working together if we are to ensure that we leave a legacy behind for our children in particular. Again, in chatting with Sir George, he told me that he entered the University of the West Indies a very long time ago, in the 50s. Now, I don't want to disclose your age, Sir George, but in 1951, that's a long time. That was even before I was born. 15 years before I was born. And the university has grown in strength, in stature, and it has contributed tremendously in building all our nations, the nations throughout the Caribbean. Whether we are independent or not, the University of the West Indies has played a tremendous part and a tremendous role it continues to play in nation building. And for that, I wish to thank all of those who have worked hard, tremendously hard in ensuring the success of our university. This evening is an evening of celebration. We have come to the end of a very important meeting, and as we often do in Trinidad style, we celebrate even the minutest of our events. So because we have had a very good meeting today, we celebrate our success today. And therefore, it is, again, a pleasure of mine to warmly welcome you here this evening and extend the hope that you will enjoy yourselves. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. I understand that during the course of today, our Vice Chancellor delivered a stellar opening innings in his inaugural University Council meeting. This gentleman has been one of the pioneers of this Global Giving Week campaign and is somebody who has put a lot of support and energy into it. And we would therefore like to invite our Vice Chancellor, Professor Sir Hilary Beckles, to deliver some remarks on the occasion of this launch.
Thank you, my friend. His Excellency, Honorable Minister, Chancellor, colleagues, friends, students, graduates, good evening, everyone. Today we had a very interesting conversation about what ought to be the ideal UWI student and graduate. And as we were having that conversation, I was reflecting upon the legacy of His Excellency. I remember when I arrived at the KFL campus many, many years ago, he had already established a reputation for being one of the finest young legal minds on the campus, but also the calypso monarch of the campus, the mighty Carmona. Rounded, brilliant, all-round student who is now the head of state. And I would like to imagine that maybe today we should have said, can we produce thousands and thousands and thousands of Carmonas? But we've also heard that our minister is also a distinguished graduate. I will have to do some research to see whether he was a cricketer, a footballer, a calypso monarch, to see whether in addition to his brilliance and now his sterling reputation as a great educational planner, he was also a sportsman. But we will find out in due course, Minister. But let me say this, all fine universities celebrate, find ways of expressing their pride and the success of their graduates. This is how they measure the extent to which they can be proud, hold their heads up high in the world, the achievements of their graduates. And I can think of no university I can think of that has had such an extraordinary impact upon its societies as the UWI. The excellence of our graduates and the full range, the full diversity of achievement is well known across the world. And this is why anywhere we go in the world, anywhere our graduates go in the world and declare themselves as graduates of UWI, they can walk into any university, anywhere, anytime to achieve anything. We cannot take that for granted. That is an extraordinary achievement. And that achievement is expressed right here this evening in the careers and the achievements of our Chancellor, all of our professors, administrators who are here, our ministers, our head of state. All of that is part of our important legacy. But increasingly, we are called upon to reach out to our graduates to make special contributions to uplift the pride of their institutions. This is especially important today. Our task in this time is to sustain the excellence of UWI in a region that is challenged with economic growth, that is challenged to achieve sustainable development. But despite these problems of growth, economic growth and development, the University of the West Indies has to find a way to continue to reflect the ideal and the dreams of our citizens. In that regard, the financing model of this institution has changed and will continue to change. For the better part of 50 to 60 years, we have been reliant principally upon the financing of our governments. Our governments in the region have made an extraordinary contribution to building out this brilliant and distinguished university. In the last 20 years or so, we have seen the private sector of the region stepping up to the plate and making extraordinary contributions to the campuses of UWI. You just have to walk through the campuses, and now you will see the brands, the names of our finest companies and corporations displayed on our campuses as symbols of that contribution to the expansion of the financial infrastructure, the resources of our university. We are grateful and we are privileged. The international donor community has come to our support. Considerable part of our research is funded by our international donors who are partnering with us in the process, Minister, of nation building. But we have not applied ourselves in a highly sophisticated way to our thousands and thousands of graduates in this region and around the world. The time has now come for us to say to our graduates in a very organized way, in a highly sophisticated way, this is the time now for you to come to the support of your university. We need your support. The governments, of course, are having challenges in meeting all the social needs of the countries. They are looking to us to find a way to reduce our dependence on them and to find a path where we can be more self-reliant. And in that self-reliance is the importance of our graduates who have done well, and we are proud of them. And we are calling upon them, not only now, but in the years ahead, to find a way to make significant contributions to the institution that have made you a successful citizen. Many have already done so in their individual capacities. Many have done so in their corporate capacities. And there is no limit to what we are willing to receive from you, because there's no limit to what we are prepared to give you. We have given the best we can. We are asking you to give what you can afford. This Give Back Week, then, is part of a long-term strategy to sustain the resources of this university in order to maintain the excellence we have achieved. We all know of the challenges facing our region, but we all know of the importance of the University of the West Indies in maintaining the dreams of our peoples. The Give Back Week will be placed in full effect in the first week of August. This is the second launch we have had of the Week of Giving, the first week of August. We will also have launches in Barbados, at the Cayfield campus, and across the Eastern Caribbean. Our inaugural launch was at Mona 3 weeks ago. And we argued that the week of emancipation is a very good time to launch the philosophy of self-reliance. Emancipation is when we were called upon to take responsibility for ourselves, to take responsibility for our futures. Our Asian community entered into the Caribbean within the context of that emancipation and gave tremendous cultural diversity to the richness of our societies. So from many points of view, the Emancipation Week was a moment that changed and transformed the Caribbean forever. We would like then to associate that week of emancipation with a set of values: self-reliance, taking responsibility for yourselves, taking responsibility for the education of your children, and seeing the celebrations of emancipation as incomplete without a reflection on education and the education of your children and your grandchildren and great-grandchildren. So in the years ahead, Emancipation Week will forever be linked not only to the jubilation of freedom, but to the process of taking responsibility for your education and the education of your families. And this is why, therefore, the Give Back Week will be the Emancipation Week. But we are taking checks even tonight and tomorrow and next week as we move and build up to August 1st, Emancipation Week. We are open for business between now and then. And so, colleagues, students, friends, our distinguished hosts, we thank you all very much. We wish you to be advocates of this initiative to help our graduates and our friends and supporters all over this region and the world to keep UWI first in their hearts so that we can do what we have been asked to do: maintain and sustain the excellence of this academy, which, as the late, great former Vice Chancellor Rex Netterford once said, is really our finest gift to ourselves as a people. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Vice Chancellor. The next item is a symbolic item, but a very important item. And I'd like to invite Professor Sankat to join me in the front of the room, on this side, please, followed by Mr. Derwin Howell of Republic Bank, Executive Director. Excuse me for 1 minute. I have to get something important. Before you turn it around, I need to give it a little introduction, and for the photographers to give them a chance to get in place. Professor Sankat, you'll hear much about him and his accomplishments over the next few months, I'm sure, as he winds down his long career at the University of the West Indies. But having worked very closely with him in a range of areas, including in fundraising, I know that this moment is going to be extremely special to him. This is a project that took many years in the making: collaboration, discussion, negotiation, fighting between the University of the West Indies and Republic Bank, many iterations, and eventually, through its demonstrating its strong commitment to the institution, we arrived at consensus between the University of the West Indies and Republic Bank, and have entered into a collaboration and a partnership. And I want you to pay careful attention, especially our photographers, to the dollar figure that's going to be on this check. This is one of the most significant single corporate commitments to the institution, and it is no more befitting that we have Mr. Derwin Howell here from Republic Bank not only an executive director with the bank at the highest levels, but also a distinguished graduate 2 times over of the University of the West Indies. And so we're going to have a symbolic handing over. Before you do so, I'd like to invite the Chancellor and Vice Chancellor to join us on either side. And as they join us, you would have heard the Vice Chancellor's call that we are accepting checks as immediately as right now. But without further ado, Mr. Howell will symbolically present over the check to Professor Sankat. And for those of you that are too far in the back and can't see, that figure is 80, yes, $80 million. So I would now like to invite Professor Sankat. You can hold on to that check very tight. And I'd like to invite Mr. Howell to deliver some brief remarks on behalf of the bank. Thank you, Chancellor.
Thank you, Sharon. Your Excellency, Anthony Carmona, President of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, the Honorable Anthony Garcia, Minister of Education, the Honorable Lovell Francis, Minister in the Ministry of Education, Sir George Allen, Chancellor of the University of the West Indies, Professor Sir Hilary Beckles, Vice Chancellor, Pro-Vice Chancellor, Professor Clem Sankat, Principal of the St. Augustine campus, and other campus principals, other distinguished guests. Good evening. It is certainly an honor and a privilege to be here today to support UWI's Global Giving Week. Not only as Republic Bank, but as Sharon said earlier, as an alumni twice over of the university. The UWI and Republic Bank have enjoyed a long and particularly fruitful partnership of over 50 years, and we have both, as institutions, dedicated ourselves to service in the national and regional communities. The projects that are the subject of our most recent collaboration with UWI are the development of the Campus North Plaza, which comprises a campus branch and a student plaza building, and a new home for the Department of Creative and Festival Arts. The arts people. The former promises to be a transformational beacon at the northern entrance of the St. Augustine campus. The latter, driven by our fervent belief that the arts have a significant and critical role to play in our societies, will allow our creative brothers and sisters space to better explore, develop, and express their artistic abilities. Our hope through this gift to the UWI is that you will continue to see us and welcome us as a patron, as a partner, as a friend in the fight to spread knowledge, create innovation, and realize the full intellectual and creative potential of our peoples. We also hope that others, both individual and corporate, throughout the nation and indeed the region, will draw inspiration to challenge themselves to see how they too can play a role in supporting the university. With the launch of this Global Giving program, we hopefully will see the coming of the day when our nation starts being defined by how much and how well we provide for each other. In their publication, The University of the West Indies, A Caribbean Response to the Challenge of Change, 2 late great scholars, Sir Philip Sherlock and Rex Nettleford, said, "The sons and daughters of the West Indian people, inheritors of a tradition of greatness, will create a great university. This is our fate as we begin the story of the founding and growth of the University of the West Indies. Ladies and gentlemen, Republic Bank, itself a child of the West Indies, is proud to play its part in nurturing the growth of this great university." I thank you.
Thank you, Derwin. Thank you, Principal. Thank you, Chancellor and Vice Chancellor. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you, Principal. You'll all be familiar with the saying, actions speak louder than words. And I'm sure that with this collaboration with Republic Bank, we've made a very loud noise. What we hope is that noise will echo profoundly across the Caribbean and that others will follow suit, that those with the means, big or small, will contribute in a similar manner to the development of our regional UWI. I'd like to now invite our Chancellor, the global patron of the annual Giving Week, to introduce His Excellency Anthony Carmona, President of the Republic, who is the Trinidad and Tobago patron of the Global Giving Week. Chancellor.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm not a young man. It's the first time I've ever been in a room where someone called the figure 80 million. I mean, when I go home and tell my wife that I was present when someone gave $80 million, I will go up in her estimation. Your Excellency, Mr. Anthony Carmona, President of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, Mr. Minister, the Honorable Anthony Garcia. As another Anthony on another occasion said, friends West Indians, lend me your ears. I come to introduce the Honorable His Excellency Anthony Carmona, President of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. His Excellency is one of the other patrons of this activity. And some of the other patrons are a former Governor General of the Bahamas, the Honorable Ivy Dumont, two former Prime Ministers, Prime Minister Owen Arthur of Barbados and Prime Minister P.J. Patterson of Jamaica, Her Excellency Dame Louise of St. Lucia, His Excellency Dr. Rodney Williams, Governor General of Antigua and Barbuda and Redonda, His Excellency Dr. Sir Colville Young, who is the Governor General of Belize. And you will ask what all of these persons have in common. They have in common a deep and abiding interest in the education of the young of this region. And they have a deep and abiding commitment to foster that institution responsible for much of that education. I'm so pleased that when I called His Excellency to ask him if he would serve as patron, usually persons of that stature hesitate 2 or 3 or 4 times before, well, I'll speak to my secretary. But His Excellency said immediately, yes, I will, because it represents a noble cause, and it represents the kinds of things he thinks with which all sons and daughters of the Pelican should be associated. The Vice-Chancellor referred to the motto of the week, which was emancipate, and he made the point that emancipation and manumission are not one and the same thing. He referred to the need to educate as one mechanism for achieving that emancipation. He didn't make enough emphasis on donate, and now I understand why he did not, because he knew what was coming after. But when he points it out, emancipate, educate, and donate represents sort of the 3 pillars on which this whole activity is founded. I am going to now ask our patron from Trinidad and Tobago, His Excellency Anthony Carmona, to make his remarks. And thank you once again, Your Excellency, for accepting to be patron.
The Honorable Anthony Garcia, Minister of Education, and Mrs. Garcia. Dr. the Honorable Lovell Francis, Minister in the Ministry of Education. CARICOM Ministers of Government. Members of the Diplomatic Corps, Sir George Allain, Chancellor of the University of the West Indies, Sir Hilary Beckles, Vice Chancellor of the University of the West Indies, Professor Clement Sanka, outgoing Principal of the University of the West Indies St. Augustine campus, distinguished donors and representatives of corporate bodies, other distinguished guests, alumni, members of the media. My Caribbean brothers and sisters and fellow UWI alumni, a heartfelt welcome to Trinidad and Tobago. I am proud of my esteemed and distinguished alumni for their highly commendable global giving initiative. As a UWI Mona and Cave Hill alumnus, the honor is mine to offer patronage for the project that will enhance game-changing and evolving role of UWI in Caribbean education. We face today a CARICOM region burdened with the effects of climate change, human and drug trafficking, crime, and an encroaching underdevelopment. These endless sessions of regional talking have not been very productive, amounting at times to diplomacy without action. And we need to arrest the decline and rot that are taking place in this region of ours. We therefore need greater collaboration and cooperation in our reach and our search for real Caribbean integration. And you will find that the motif of what I have to say centers on Caribbean integration. Yes, we are fighting among ourselves for economic scraps, and it is not going to benefit anyone but someone else. We shoot ourselves in the foot, and when we are not doing that, we are firing shots across the bow of Caribbean unity. Look at West Indies cricket. West Indies cricket is dear to our hearts, an active and working symbol of our Caribbean integration. Former West Indian cricket captain Clive Lloyd opined, and I quote, "Cricket is the ethos around which West Indian society revolves. All our experiments in Caribbean integration either failed or maintained a dubious survivability. But cricket remains the instrument of Caribbean cohesion, the removal of arid insularity and nationalistic prejudice," end of quote. We therefore owe the sport of cricket a debt of gratitude for the mighty task it has accomplished in bringing Caribbean people together. And it must be very disconcerting to us all when we view the imbroglio taking place between the WICB and our 2020 world champions. And it is a basis for cause for pause. The only other entity that has been a success in forging the tenets of Caribbean integration has been the University of the West Indies. And that too is suffering from the vagaries of the internalization of education structures and the creeping insulation of the education system in the Caribbean. It appears, unlike what went before, that every island in the Caribbean wants its own university, its own engineering faculty, its own legal faculty, its own medical faculty. And as much as it possibly results in easier access to education, it is rupturing the CARICOM spirit and the sense of Caribbeanness that our generation benefited from. There's a type of dysfunctional strife in the region that militates against the spirit of the Caribbean integration movement. And we, the alumni, we need to fix it. I will be honest with you. I do have a very deep concern about what is going on in the Caribbean with two of our leading countries, Jamaica and Trinidad and Tobago. Not to mention other pockets of strife, not as publicly ventilated among other countries in the region. Nobody wins a trade or a migration war. And everyone, regardless of the islands you come from or go to, is entitled to fundamental respect, treatment, and equal human rights. Do I need to remind all of us here today that we have all signed off on conventions, memoranda of understanding, and the CSME that we cannot and must not selectively follow? The bottom line, Jamaica, Trinidad and Tobago, Barbados, and Guyana, and the OCS countries. It is simply this, an African proverb that I've always remembered from my Jamaica days, that encapsulates the futility of fighting among ourselves. And I quote, "When two brothers fight, a stranger reaps the harvest," end of quote. In April 2011, the UWI Institute of International Relations published a report on Caribbean regional integration based on opinions expressed by a wide range of regional stakeholders. By analyzing the constraints facing the integration movement and recommending how these might be addressed, the team sought, in the words of the report, and I quote, to re-energize the development process and to halt the perceived stagnation of regional processes and shift them into a growth and development trajectory, end of quote. The report suggests that the stakeholder community, which includes the political leadership, regional institutions, civil society, the private sector, and developmental partners, is constrained, and I quote, by a lack of vision, weak implementation of decisions, mistrust, poor leadership, and institutional decline, end of quote. Some 5 years later, the region continues to be plagued by these very same challenges, so that the recommendations outlined in the report remain as relevant today as they did in 2011. The free movement of persons across the region is seen as an essential factor in an ever closer union among the people of CARICOM member states. But the Treaty of Chaguaramas identifies the categories of persons to whom the free movement condition would apply. The fact that the immigration question continues to be a matter of ongoing tension and regional mistrust is in part a leadership issue. As the UWI report reminds us, regional leadership, especially the leadership of heads of government, is critical to the regeneration, advancement of the integration process. No one is denying that the integration process is complex, but there has never been a lack of ideas and proposals as to how this complexity may be effectively addressed. The report suggests that what is lacking, and I quote, the unequivocal political commitment to regionalism among CARICOM political leaders, and the lack of leadership on or champions of the regional project, end of quote. This has led in part to the so-called implementation deficit, if I may quote it, the unwarranted delays that frustrate the best efforts of those who actively promote the development of a Caribbean community. Ladies and gentlemen, ever since the English-speaking Caribbean took its first step towards a single federated state in 1958, Caribbean thinkers, along with development experts within and outside the region, if we adopt a shared and united approach to the challenges that we face intra-regionally and in our interactions with the world, extended world community, today, Caribbean societies are confronting even greater difficulties in treating with such issues as crime and security, health issues, and of increasing importance, the danger posed by climate change. The need to pool resources has therefore never been more urgent. As the UWI report asserts, and I quote, the longer meaningful reform waits, the greater the political, social, and financial cost of inaction, and the more diminished becomes the real value of sovereignty to individual Caribbean countries faced with existential threats, end of quote. I do recall the growth personally of my Caribbeanness, having done a first degree in Mona, Jamaica, a secondary in Cayville, Barbados, and having taught politics and English at St. Augustine. For many, many years, when asked about my citizenship by a foreigner, I would proudly tell them that I am a Trin Jam Beige. Now, I don't say it anymore, but I feel it. It remains in my heart, and at the end of the day, that is what really matters. Because for me, it represents a guiding light in the strength, power, and importance of real Caribbean integration. Every time I stand in these fora, I am amazed at the width and breadth of persons represented. Doctors, lawyers, judges, engineers, military professionals, pilots, journalists, sports personalities, a timeless list of influential persons, and I stress influential, because as alumni, that is what we are, influential. We have the ability to influence and affect every single sphere of our society. So if that is the case, why don't we just do that? The Vice Chancellor's initiative is the most powerful admonition that can be given to any morally upright citizens or alumni. Simply give back. As UWI alumni in government, in business, in law, and in politics, as those who sit next to the platforms of political power, you have the opportunity to fix our problems. This issue of migration. Migration is a way of life from time immemorial. A nation survived as a result. They survived with many evolving to be bigger and better nations because of migration. We must not declare war on each other. Rather, our declaration must be one of peace, hope, growth, unity, and brotherly love. As alumni, we have to make a stand in the sight of wrong, especially when wrong is becoming right. As professional UWI alumni, you must not be sycophantic, but independent and true in dispensing your responsibilities. And if your leader is wrong, whether Prime Minister, President, Governor General, Chairman, Managing Director, you respectfully, and I repeat respectfully, tell them they're wrong, and then tell them what is right. If we are serious, and if we are serious about genuine social, economic, and political transformation that will foster change in the region, a vehicle for such transformation is genuine service leadership. And it is through that service leadership that we, the alumni, must truly lead rather than be led. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, for your critical insights, your words of wisdom, and most importantly, for your patronage of this important initiative. Ladies and gentlemen, we've come to the end of the formal program. I know you've all had a very long, hard day of deliberation and engagement. And I think you've heard much about our campaign, which I'd like to remind you is from the 1st to the 7th of August. It will be an annual giving campaign. But as the Vice Chancellor said, you don't have to wait until August. We're taking checks from now. And I would like to end very simply by sharing the motto of the campaign: emancipate, educate, and most importantly, donate. Have a good evening, and let us enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you.